Ever since I started using Anchor to record my podcast, the entire process has been seamless. Anchor has everything that I need to record and edit my podcast directly from my phone or my computer. Additionally, Anchor goes one step further and distributes my podcast for me without me having to do anything so that it can be heard on Spotify, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, and the many other streaming platforms that are out there. And the best part about the entire thing is that every single time someone listens to my podcast, cha-ching, I make money. Yes, honey. I get to monetize my podcast with no minimum listenership or no minimum downloads. So if you've been considering starting your own podcast, everything you need to make a podcast is on Anchor. So make sure you head on over, download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started.
You are now listening to the one and only Nancy Ruffin.
You are tuned in to The Nancy Ruffin Show, a digital global classroom where individuals across all ages, backgrounds, and career levels tune in for guidance and motivation to live life on their own terms. Hosted by award-winning author, transformation coach, and the self-proclaimed Latina Oprah, The Nancy Ruffin Show is where inspiring thought leaders, modern-day influencers, and social game changers come to discuss their own personal journeys and have real conversations about the journey to success. It's where the next generation of leaders come to tap into their potential, ignite their fire, and expand their self-awareness. So if you're ready to power up and blaze trails of positive change, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. So this week, I am joined by the lead director at Pregones, the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater in New York City, Melisa Ramos. She is a filmmaker, a motion graphics artist with over 10 years in this industry. And considering all that we are going through with the current state of the world, with this pandemic, we see that there's so many industries being affected just in how they're conducting business. And so the arts is just another industry that is being impacted. And for that reason, I wanted to have Melisa on to talk a little bit about how it has impacted the work that she's doing at Pregones. We're going to be talking also about the 21 Islands Film Festival currently going on at the theater. It's open till April 30th. And we really just wanted to get to know her work, and how she's gotten to where she is and what she hopes to continue doing through this work and her vision with her work at Pregones. So Melisa, welcome. Thank you for being on. And as I was mentioning in the intro, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this line of work.
Well, first, thank you for having me, Nancy. How do I start it? I would say, it's really like a family thing, right? My mom was a language teacher in Puerto Rico. She's a writer, a poet, and I feel like I get that storytelling from her. And my father was an architect, and he was also a carpenter, and my grandma was a seamstress, and all my aunts. Okay. I'm a seamstress as well, and I'm an artisan. So these two skills, I felt that they came together in film. Because in film, I can tell a story, and I can also build a set.
Yes.
Or I can sew the clothing for the film. Like all these things that the skills that I always had since a child, right? I started sewing when I was 10. I started doing jewelry. I have micromotor skills, like I do tiny things. But I wanted to tell a story. I didn't want them just to be a piece.
Right.
Of something. And in film, that's where I find like all these elements that I find can
So
join.
let me ask you this. So were you born and raised in Puerto Rico?
Yes, I was born in Puerto Rico, but at 1 year old, we moved to Germany.
Oh,
My
okay.
father was in the army, and we spent 10 years there. That's where I learned English.
Wow. So was German your first language? Well, or Spanish? What was your first language?
Uh, at home, it was Spanish, and then at
Okay.
school, it was English.
Okay.
And German, we had a teacher that gave us the basics, but I never practiced it. I just know like the numbers from 1 to 10 and
The basics,
the
right?
so that's your childhood. So that's my childhood in the base is like with all the kids from the South. Those are like
Right.
my memories from Louisiana, Kentucky, Alabama. Those were my
So you were in Germany until you were 10 and then you moved back
to
down south?
Puerto Rico.
Oh, to Puerto Rico. Okay.
So I
And
did school, college in Puerto Rico.
so then
Uh,
when did you move to New York? Like how did you find your way to New York, or why did you move to New York?
wow. Um, so I have to say, I'm epileptic since I'm 4,
Okay.
and when I hit puberty, I started having seizures monthly. So I have had like hundreds, right? And when you're epileptic, you're not supposed to work around electricity, but I chose film. And in my undergrad, I couldn't do like studio work, camera work in front of the camera, post-production. By those times that those computers would give you a lot of electricity, I would still have seizures, but I would do production design, and I would storytell and do photography as much as I could. When I controlled the condition, I controlled it like at 25 years old. Then I decided to get a master's in film and come to
Okay.
the U.S. So it
Okay.
took me maybe 10 years from what would be a person without a condition,
Right.
because I didn't want to leave the country, be alone,
Right.
having monthly seizures.
Right. I
So
would imagine that is scary, to be
it
by
is,
yourself and God forbid something happens, you're alone.
you're alone, yeah. And I mean, having it in a public bus is enough. I had
Yeah.
those experiences, and I'm very lucky that people like.
Right. So have you been able to manage it so that there are fewer, or like is there medication that you're taking?
Yes,
Okay.
medication, strict diet, sleeping well, no alcohol, no smoking, things like that. Certain more calm lifestyle.
Right.
I don't do a lot the set. I do like the set,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't be 12 hours in the sun because I'm gonna get a heat stroke.
Right.
And I
Right.
always felt I don't want to jeopardize people's set, but I'm actually a producer and I'm a good producer. So people would come to me for the logistics, for the production. I'm just not there on the
On set. Right.
I'll do all the pre-production. I'll be, on top.
Right.
On set, that's much, much, much harder. And I discovered that when I came to New York. I did a master's degree in Florida. Then I taught 2 years. And in my master's is when I learned motion graphics, visual effects. And when I started teaching, my coworkers were actually working in Game of Thrones. And
Wow. Oh, that was one of my favorite shows. Oh,
I mean, I had this
the visual graphics. I
amazing.
mean, in that show, and then just in so many of the shows that we see or the films, it's individuals like you, right? that make that happen.
That make it happen. So I was teaching at an art institute in Miami, and I had a coworker who was working by then in, Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a teacher too, a master's teacher, and he would like train the students. I was always at the school, even the hours I don't have to be there, like coaching more students. So I connected a lot with these other artists that work in these studios. So I learned a lot more about post-production. And when you do animation or visual effects, you're like an art director because you're doing it from scratch,
right,
to the end.
So in your schooling and just being around these other individuals that were already kind of working, with these studios and on these movies, was that how you broke in, into getting work in that way, or had you already been also working?
Well, I wasn't that advanced by then.
Okay.
In order to, because it really takes a long time to master these skills. But what it gave me was the confirmation that I was good at it, that I had the patience, because it's very tedious. Like all this work that is frame by frame, it's very meticulous. And I was like, oh, but I'm enjoying it.
Right.
So I continued. The school closed. I think they closed the department. So I decided to move. There was no more, I would say, production jobs that are creative in Miami besides fashion and events.
Right.
So I'm Puerto Rican, and we all have family in New York.
Yes, this is true. So this was the next likely just place for you to come.
This is where I have to go. I mean, plus I have family a lot of places. My grandma has 16 children.
Oh my goodness. God bless her.
She was 20, but she raised 16 and lived 103 years. Can you imagine?
My gosh, what a blessing. What a blessing. I actually just lost my grandmother 2 weeks ago, and she was 93. So even, with that, I think that anyone who lives past 90, is just blessed, to have gone that long. And for your grandmother to have lived until 103, wow. That's huge.
So the oldest daughter of her is my aunt, right? She lives here in Brooklyn. And she's been over 60 years here. She's now, I think, 88, with her memory perfect.
Wow.
So I came to live in her couch, what we all do.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
This is auntie. And she's very used to it because everyone did it.
Right.
And I was just applying for jobs, and I got a job at a post-production house in 6 months.
Amazing.
Which I thought was really, good of me.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, 6 months,
I got a job. I was like, wow. And everyone's, what are you doing? And I said, well, I would send 20 applications per day in order to have 100 weekly. And
so do you think that persistence and giving yourself that goal just really helped, the fact that you were able to secure a job quicker probably than you expected?
What I discovered when I came to New York first was that it is so big. The city is so big. It has so many companies that you don't know where to start.
Right.
So because it's like so many options. And so I thought, okay, people don't know me because they don't know you physically. They know a name and a title and a resume.
Right.
So I said, my resume has to start circulating among people. So I would apply to jobs that I'm not even interested in applying. But they know me. Maybe they don't hire me. They recommend me to another person.
Right.
So I would go to all the job interviews, even if I was like, please, I don't want this job.
Well, right, because it was an opportunity for them to know you, to meet
You
you.
know me.
Yeah.
I mean, I have had 2 interviews at WWE, you know. I've been twice to Connecticut.
Right.
But maybe I don't do that job, but I'll do some freelance for you. And what is interesting, I have had interviews that years later, they didn't hire me, but years later they hire me because I'm Hispanic.
Interesting.
And I did this motion graphics for craft,
Okay.
all this food cooking thing, like 50
Right.
recipes. They're like, oh, we need them in Spanish too. So the person needs to know to edit, has to know motion graphics, and has to know Spanish.
Wow.
See how the market has changed and the position that we have now.
Right. Right. And so the fact that you submitted the resume for something totally different later on down the road, that really helped you secure now a position that you wanted, that you're qualified for, and that you could really use all of your skills.
Yeah, and then your information is in an archive, you know. After 2 years, they email you again, hey, do you want to keep it? So I'm like, oh, sure, because you never know. So
Right.
for me, that interaction is to establish a relationship.
Yes.
It's not to go get that job.
Right.
It's not always going to happen. And this was one thing that I used to teach to my students, because I used to give this class of portfolio and resume and how to talk, how
to present yourself.
Yeah, and what to expect. So I kept building those relationships. I was working overnight, you know, from 7 to 4 a.m. That first was hard. It's hard for my epilepsy.
Right.
Editing what they call nonfiction, which is reality shows.
Right.
And documentaries for True TV, A&E, Discovery, all this content. And these companies work like a hospital. They have 3 shifts.
Right.
And it's a nonstop. So I was like, oh, this is how America makes so much content.
Right.
You can't do this with 1 8 to 5.
Right. Right.
So it's like that, like rotating.
It's just, and it's constant. Like the work never stops.
The
right.
work stops. You're doing the same thing. It was good because it got me very agile at the post-production and technical. But it was not creative, because I have no creative decision as a teacher in these post-production companies.
Right.
And that's why I started saying, I think I have to produce, I have to do things.
Because you wanted to have that control. You wanted to be able to say, you know, what's being put out there. You wanted to have control of that.
Some decision making and contributing creatively. When you're editing shows that already have a format and been done by decades, I mean, reality shows, that it has a formula. There's nothing to contribute, you know?
Right.
There's nothing to change in frenemies.
Yeah, you're right.
In Jersey Shore, you know, there's nothing to change.
Right, it's the same.
The formula works, and they keep, you know,
they keep producing different seasons of the same thing, basically.
Of the same thing.
Right.
At least that gave me a spectrum of how big the market and the media is, that you work with things that you don't even watch. Right.
So let me ask you this, because yo soy puertorriqueña también, and I know that this is true for a lot of Latin families. The fact that you decided to take your education and pursue arts, right, instead of a profession that's say like a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher, or these professions where we know you're going to get a job and you can make, good income, and they're more stable than, let's say, careers that require creativity, right? Mm-hmm. How did that affect your parents at all? Did they put any pressure on you to kind of get a traditional job versus something in the arts? Because for me, I'm a writer, and they never encouraged a career in writing. They didn't stop it, but my father wanted me to have a secure, stable job. So I went into accounting and like I went left with it, but they wanted me to always be able to provide for myself, as financially in that way. Was that ever a concern for your parents and in your career choice?
Well, for my mom, she was a teacher.
Okay.
And she was always very supportive in terms of that you have to do what makes you happy. Mm. And that the money, there's many ways of just making money.
That's amazing.
There's many resources. And my dad, same, because he had so many careers.
Right.
Different type of careers. I wanted to be a professor, okay, but I always had the idea to teach after.
Right.
Right. Like after. But the first jobs I got were teaching. Mm-hmm. And I discovered it. I mean, it is so expensive to learn in the U.S. that it's like people pay.
Yeah.
To learn, to be trained, and beyond that, beyond just the academic, because I have taught in communities.
Right. Outside of this traditional, academia.
Yeah, outside, and it's challenging, and at the same time, it's amazing. It's amazing because I find there in those communities the people with the most ambition.
Yes, right,
and
right.
It blows you away because you want to do so many things. I have got my students jobs. Some work with me.
That's amazing. It's amazing to see the impact that you're having through your own work, and then in helping other, like, younger people, and maybe not so young, but just helping other individuals that have the same passion, the same ambition, really develop themselves into doing work that they love and that it's meaningful. And to know that you had a hand in doing that is amazing.
Yeah. I taught for a year at M&N. That's a neighborhood, like a neighborhood network.
Yeah, is that the Manhattan
Neighborhood Network?
Right.
I taught 1 year, all softwares. I had students. I had an 80-year-old student, and she was great.
Look at that.
Such a good editor.
So phenomenal. Isn't that something? Isn't it something to see that the desire to learn, and to find something, to get an education, like, it never stops, no matter how old you get.
Never. And I think that is something that artists have.
Yeah. Because
an artist is always striving for something new.
Yes.
So you're constantly learning and learning and learning. So for me, the teaching is just like a therapy.
Right.
I keep learning.
Right, because even in the teaching work that you're doing, you're still also learning from your students. Because as storytellers, as creatives, we each bring our own experiences that are different. And then it's like, okay, how do we tell these stories in a creative way? Like, because everyone's story is going to be different. And so that brings out something different, from you, and how you're teaching, and in how they're learning to tell their own stories.
Yes, yes, and it's what I like in the dynamic of teaching. I mean, film teachers, we don't get like more than 10 students.
Right.
That's one thing, at least in post-production. So
Okay.
that's an advantage because I know what the difference of having 20.
Mm,
That's not, it's not the same.
right.
I only get no more than 10. I can have a one-on-one and we can have a group and a focus group and discuss the storytelling because I teach post-production, I teach the softwares, and all the technical anyone can learn, but storytelling, not everyone
Mm-hmm.
can tell the story.
Right. So let me ask you, because when we first started talking, you spoke about how your mom was a storyteller, and even just, your father and all of the different things that he has done. And even with the work that you're doing now with Pregones and this film festival, I noticed that there's so many films from different countries, right? And each of them are telling their own story in their own way. What would you say, like, how important is storytelling to maintaining culture, maintaining our own culture or the cultures of, other countries? Why is it so important that these stories be told?
Well, because for me, when the story is told, it's like embedded in the people,
Yeah.
right? So the art is one thing that does that. It's give you an example. It's like a song when you hear a plena song, right?
Mm-hmm.
That tells an anecdote. You never forget that,
Right.
right? So that's why we have to tell our stories because in our system, the education system has a huge gap in telling the true stories
Yes.
of Americans, of Latin Americans, of everywhere.
Yeah.
So we, the artists, we can tell that true story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can learn your history, your heritage, your ancestry, because it's not going to be in the books.
Right. It's also how you keep that alive, right? It's through the storytelling. Even when we think back, like as you mentioned, to our own history. You're right. We don't see our history in any of the history books. Even someone as yourself who was educated in Puerto Rico, you're still very much taught American history, right? It's not really the history of the island or of our people or of the struggle or how we overcame. It's always American history. And
Yes.
so we have to be the ones that honor our ancestors and the things that they survived and what they overcame and how they still succeeded in spite of everything.
Yeah. And something I say always, everyone has a story. And if you're not a filmmaker or you're not a writer, you can get someone to do
To
that,
document it. Yeah.
to document it, record it. Just
And there's so many different ways to tell stories, right? And in my work, whenever I'm asked what I do or who I am, like all I say really, I describe myself as a storyteller and someone who has figured out how to do that through many different mediums. And so for me, initially, it started through writing. So I wrote poetry, and then I started writing books, and then I took the words and I started the podcast. Now I'm starting this new YouTube series, but all of it is just a different way to get my words out there. And even like through photography, you can still tell a story through images. There's so many different ways where I don't think we have to limit ourselves in our creativity. And even for someone as yourself, you mentioned you're an artisan. That's also a different way to document your history and your influences and the what is the word that I'm looking for? Just the traditions of our ancestors. right?
Yes. So one thing beautiful that the festival has, besides, right, receiving so many applications, this year I had to close the opening of receiving because it was 2000, and I was like, okay, no, it can't.
Right.
It can't. It was already maybe a month. But we have had the festival for 4 years. So the filmmakers that submit the first year, they submit the second.
Right.
So then
And
it's
then they continue. And then the more people that learn about it,
exactly.
right? And so that's how it grows. So talk to me about the film festival. Talk to me about why it was created, and some of the work that actually goes in to putting something like this together.
So initially, Rosalba, the director of Pregones, she has the theater has projects with islands.
Okay.
They partner with theater companies in Hawaii, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted a concept that we could explore culturally other islands
Okay.
around the world in one. But how can you do that with theater? That's really hard, right?
Right.
Actors, it's
Yeah.
like a theater festival.
Right.
So she came with the idea of a film festival, and I said, well, let's do a short film festival. We're going to have a lot more content, a lot more options. And I worked in Puerto Rico years ago in the film festival Cine Fiesta,
Mm-hmm.
which is almost like a 15-year-old film festival. And I was part of the selection committee for 2 years. So with them, I saw like thousands
Right.
of shorts. So you start building a criteria in what a short is, because a short is different, right? So for me, a good short tells you the moment, a moment in the history of a character that changes his life.
Okay.
It doesn't tell you the whole background.
Right.
It doesn't have to tell you all of that. It just gives you this moment, a turning point, and the end.
In the end. Okay.
So that's something I look for in the good storytelling. With 21 Islands, we have received also so many different techniques, from stop motion to mixed media to cinematography, like traditional cinematography, 3D, like amazing work. And so we look that they are from islands. The topic has to do with islands.
Okay.
Or it has that sense around. And it's right, it's hard to tell, for instance, what is the experience of an islander from UK.
Right.
Right, because it's huge.
Right.
Still an island.
Right.
And an islander in the Caribbean.
Right.
And or others that have like big cities.
Yeah.
You always find topics in common. Some of them, of course, a lot have to do with the ocean.
Right. Well, because they're islands.
But this beautiful relationship, like I had a short from Turkey of an island, a municipality island, and it was about a girl with autism.
Oh, okay.
And her taking the ferry with her father. It barely has lines. It was
right.
beautiful. And how people react to her behavior and this certain discrimination, right? To a girl with autism. But all the short was just you taking the ferry from one point
to the other.
But that is telling you a daily life of an islander, But it
Right.
goes beyond that. It's about a person with autism,
Autism. Yeah.
how they're taking care of these two girls. So when I put together the festival, there's one thing I consider very important. When you put together the shorts, I put them in a way that together they tell another story.
Okay. So
So
individually they tell their own, but together it's part of
together,
a bigger theme.
it's part of a bigger theme. So you have one, if it's this girl with autism and the ferry, then we have another short of fishermen.
Right.
It has to do with the port, and then continue. So they're like threaded, like,
Right.
and that gives the audience an experience that is very different from other festivals. Because when you're watching short content, you cannot be drastic and
Right.
cut and put me something that's gonna,
Right.
put my nerves. You can't do that because
So this is how when you've broken it out to the different groups, right? Because there's like group 1, group 2. So that grouping is really based on a bigger theme.
a bigger thing.
Okay, that makes sense. And so let's talk about now the fact that we are all kind of quarantined at home. We're doing this social distancing. So where we would have traditionally probably gone to Pregones, to watch these films, right? Like we can't do that now. So how are you getting these films out still to the general public so that they can view them?
So the films are in Pregones website,
Okay.
pregonesprtt.org. And so we are promoting the festival through different platforms. But the main one to watch them is the website.
Okay.
And we also have, after each screening, you're going to find a voting ballot for the audience. So this year we are really, really, doing an effort for the audience award because it's more challenging. We don't know
Right.
how much audience we have.
Right.
It's a different, like I call it, it's a different animal.
Yeah.
When all this happened with the corona and the cancellation of big gatherings, I had a concern that the filmmakers will maybe resist because festivals don't allow you a lot of times, if it's already online,
Mm-hmm.
to submit it. They're like, okay, we don't want your short, it's already online.
Right.
So I sent a mass email, asking, and everyone was like, it was great. Everyone was really pleased, really happy. And at the end, filmmakers just want their stories to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all they
So let
want.
me ask you, how do you think that this new way to consume these films, these short films, will impact how you market this, in the future? Like once we're allowed to go back outside and gather and go to the theater, do you think that this has shifted the way that you're going to promote future film festivals? Will you continue to offer them online? Or, just I guess in what way are you thinking long term when it comes to these film festivals?
Well, me personally, I would definitely add it as an element, not
Hmm.
necessarily at the same dates,
Right,
right? Like I would do the presential
right.
festival first, and then do the
Yes,
online one with some seasons.
right.
That would be great. Even we have done screenings with the best of 21 Islands, kind of
Right,
a curation, like all the winners in the 4 years.
right.
But I definitely see the online system combined with the presential.
Yeah, and I mean,
Festival.
I love to attend, the film festivals in person because a lot of times you get the opportunity to meet the filmmakers, and the actors and the actresses. So it provides just a different experience in that way. But then there's other times where I can't physically make it, to the in-person theater experience, that I would still love the opportunity to still view the film in a different way. And I speak about, I speak from just from my line of work. Like, I've attended film festivals where, I'll do the red carpet. I get to interview the directors. We get to talk about it, and then I can sit in the theater with them and actually view. But then there's times when I haven't been able to do that. And then I haven't been able to see the film either because they're not offering it online. So I think that you incorporating both of them in some way is an absolutely genius idea.
Yeah, I think it will be great. I mean, I have seen films from friends of mine, films from Puerto Rico. I'm always trying to see what they are doing, right? And what other places are doing. But I have had to wait a year or two,
right,
to get to see them. And I'm like, is the movie here? Is the movie there? Where is it? Oh, it's in a festival in Philadelphia. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to Philadelphia. No, it's in a festival in New York, but then I'm doing something else.
Right.
So it's like, okay, 2 years later, it's on HBO.
So how can filmmakers submit their own work? Because I have a lot of friends. I have actually a good friend now who's doing her own short. She was actually supposed to launch it in May, but now because of all of this, like, she's had to kind of rethink about how she's going to present it to an audience. But for filmmakers who are just starting out and want to get their shorts, to be a part of this film festival, where do they submit? Or who should they reach out to?
We use the platform filmfreeway.com.
Okay.
And you can search there 21 Islands and it will show up.
Okay.
I recommend all filmmakers to have an account with Film Freeway. It's a very friendly, user-friendly interface. It has over 600,000 film festivals.
Wow. Okay.
And they keep you updated. So you upload your film there, and they're going to send you
Got it.
festivals that will be interested or that are taking that type of
right. So it's a good platform because it'll connect them not only to your film festival, but to many others that are happening that they can submit their work to.
Yeah. Also, one thing to take in consideration is if you have a short, don't make it over 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because the issue is that if you give me 6 shorts of 10, I have 1 hour, right?
Right.
And I can show 6 short films. But if you give me 3 of 20 minutes, I only have 3 experiences to share.
Right. Right.
One thing filmmakers have to consider for short film festivals, because I've been, people write to me, oh, can I know why you did not select my short? Is it bad? And I cannot really give feedback to 2,000 people.
Right.
But I always tell them that it's not necessary because your short was bad. That has festivals have very different criteria, and a lot of times it's the duration. Sometimes it's the theme, but it doesn't mean it is not.
It was bad, right? It's just, it doesn't fit right now because of the things that you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes by topic, by, maybe by the issue.
Right.
I have taken films that tackle an issue that it's presented so well and at the same time rare.
Right.
For us, and I'm like, oh my God, this has to be, and we have to see this story.
So, before I let you go, what or who inspires you?
I would say my 2 grandmas inspire me every day. On my mom's side, my grandmother, the one, she lived 103. Ramona, she was a healer. and people would go every weekend, every day for her to sobarlos.
Yeah.
And I always grew up thinking she was a magical creature.
Oh, because aren't abuelas that way? They are magical creatures, aren't they? Like they could heal any and everything. Just go to abuela; she'll take care of it.
She was the santigüera of the barrio, right? And people would go with an illness in the stomach, and she would just touch a little, and that's over. And on the other side, my other grandma, Juana Marquez, was like, she was a landowner. She was always with her machete. She was like a lawyer. And Juana, no one could step over Juana. She was only like 5'3". She was a Black woman. And she was a fighter. And
so you got the best of both worlds, right? You got the fighter and the healer.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Juana, no one would step over Juana. She raised 6 children. She had 3 marriages at the same age. They were the same age. But my grandma Juana lived in a time where none of that was allowed, this thing of being divorced, you know?
Right.
When she was divorced, it was on the newspapers.
Wow.
She divorced her first husband.
And that made the news.
On the newspapers, yeah, because that was so rare. And she was like, I'm not ashamed of that.
Right.
And her sense of justice, like she would not cover anything that her children do. Even if
that's so important, because that really, and I don't know if many people realize that, but that is what molds the future generations.
Yes.
You know, those actions, because when we make excuses for, or when we try to hide certain things, it's almost like we're enabling that behavior to continue. And then that's what gets passed on, you know, generation to generation.
I think also, we put a limitation. We create a limitation.
Yes.
I'll give you one example. My condition, right? I was never told, oh, Melissa cannot do that because she's epileptic. Oh, no.
Right.
There was no special treatment.
Right.
My mom was like, you have to get an A.
Right.
And one day I was not good at math. And I was like, hey, Mom, maybe I had an episode. Do you think the teacher would, you know?
She wasn't trying to let you use as an excuse.
Well, we actually asked the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She was concerned. You know, I failed again in the test. And she was like, no, okay, you're not getting algebra. You know, you just have to study more. So when we put that excuse, it's also in anything that you do, it becomes a limitation.
Yes.
It's you create the limitation. Like, oh no, but he has ADHD, that's why they cannot do this.
Right.
No, that's not true. Now you have to fight more.
Right.
And I say that to everyone under not only a health condition, but here in America, you're a minority, you're going to have to fight more.
Mm-hmm.
That is your condition.
Yes.
You're a woman.
Yes.
This is my condition. I'm a woman. There's things that I have to do a lot more. But doesn't mean it is a limitation, because at the same time, it's a blessing.
Right. No, it's so true. It's so true.
Look how much we can handle.
Let me tell you, yes, we can handle so much more than men, okay? Because, I mean, it's just how we were made, how we were created. And we kind of are forced to just be able to do so many things at once, because we don't have the luxury of just sitting back and doing one thing at a time. If we did one thing at a time, we wouldn't accomplish as much, because we don't have the luxury of time. We have to be able to juggle and do as many things as we can, because, like, as you said, we have to work that much harder. And I think that gives us an advantage, because we don't allow ourselves to have the excuses.
Yes.
So one last thing.
Uh-huh.
What advice would you give to your younger self, knowing everything that you know now, knowing all of your experiences and the outcomes of certain challenges? What advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self means
like 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, when you first kind of started out, maybe you didn't know, what you wanted to do, or maybe you saw things as being quote unquote impossible, but knowing where you are today and everything that you've already overcome, what would you say to, your 15-year-old younger self?
I would say to take more risks.
Take more risks. I think that's great advice. I think that we limit ourselves with the risks that we take because we're afraid.
We're afraid. I mean, and do not procrastinate. I fight with that.
Okay. Excellent advice. How can my viewers and listeners get in contact with you? Where can they find you? Are you on any social platforms?
Yes, I am on Facebook.
Okay.
Melisa Ramos with one S.
Okay. Melisa with one S.
With one S.
Okay.
And in Instagram, I have 2 accounts. I am Eco Bloom. It's a brand I have of paper jewelry.
Okay.
What you see in the back.
I see. I love. I'm big on. I love earrings. I love big earrings. I love colorful earrings.
They're like.
Oh, those are pretty. I like those.
Of paper. Let me see the big ones. I'm saying because it's the account I most follow on Instagram.
Those are nice.
They're all made out
so
of.
They can connect. They can follow that at Eco Bloom.
At Eco Bloom.
Okay.
I also have an account. The Instagram is Melisa at, I think it's 123.
Okay. And that's Melisa with one S, Melisa 123.
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you, Melisa, for joining me today. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your journey, talking to us about the film festival. For those of you who are interested, in watching any of these films, make sure you head over to the Pregones, PRTT.com website, and they will be there available for you to view until April 30th, right?
Yes. And score and vote as well.
Yes, make sure to vote. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to The Nancy Ruffin Show.